Good evening. I'd like to call the General Committee meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance?
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you grateful for the blessings you have bestowed upon our community, our school system, and our families over these past few weeks. We pray for those who were heavily impacted by Hurricane Ida and for those who lie in the path of another. Please give them the strength needed to rebuild their lives, their homes, and their schools, much as you gave us and continue to give us the strength to make our long journey back. Thank you for keeping us safe during our travels away from home and throughout our return. Help us now to continue with our focus on teaching and learning. These things we ask in your name.
Amen. Mr. Campbell, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Ms. Foche.
Mr. Campbell? Mr. Egan? Ms. Jackson? Ms. Lemoyne? Mr. England? Ms. Dysart?
Here.
Mr. Long?
Here.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Warner? And Ms. White.
Thank you, Ms. Foche. First item on the agenda is the swearing in of District 3 School Board Member Kelly Lee Bowman. If you would, come forward, please.
Right.
Good evening.
Yeah. And if her family would
And if-
please gather round.
And if you'll repeat after me, please. I, Kelly Lee Bowman,
I, Kelly Lee Bowman,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States, that I will support the
that I will
Constitution
support the Constitution
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of this state,
and the laws of this state,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all duties
all duties
to the best of my ability
to the best of my abilities
and understanding.
and understanding.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you all.
Ms. Bowman, if you would, come have your seat. And Mr. Justice of the Peace, Judge Bowman, thank you so much for
welcome, ma'am.
swearing in your lovely wife. And congratulations, Kelly. We are welcome. We are very glad to have you on our board. And thank you very much, and again, welcome. Anyone else? Okay. Before we go on to our regular agenda, I'd like to take a moment of silence for a dear, dear friend and a gentleman who gave 50 years of his life to our district, Mr. Paul Granberry. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. And our deepest condolences and sympathies go out to the wonderful Granberry family, Debbie, Aaron, and Jill. As I said, Mr. Granberry was a dear friend, and he worked with us for the St. Bernard Parish school system for over 50 years as a teacher, a counselor, a principal, our personnel director, and he was just a great guy and gave of himself for 50 years to the students and the staff and members of the school system. And we deeply appreciated always having Paul as our friend. Our deepest condolences go out to the Cranberry family. Ms. Ochai, did you want to say something?
Why don't we show the video? And then
Okay.
maybe we can-
Okay.
Our school family lost a dear friend and true gentleman recently with the passing of Paul Granberry, a stalwart in our schools and community. To know Paul was to love him, and Paul was very, very well known. An integral part of our district's success, Paul served the families of St. Bernard for over 50 years in his varied roles as a supervisor, a principal, a counselor, and a teacher. We are forever indebted to him for his tireless efforts in advocating for the people of his beloved parish. We offer condolences to his wife, Debbie, on her loss, but we know that Paul's love of life, laughter, and learning live on in the hearts of all that knew and worked with him. Paul's educational legacy also lives through the work being done each day by his daughters, Jill and Erin, who share their father's commitment to the students and families of St. Bernard in our classrooms and in our community. Thank you, Paul, for your incredible example of what strength, faith, family, and friendship truly mean. You may be gone, but you will never be forgotten. You want me to?
Ms. Voce?
I'm going to try to get through this. We attended the services on Saturday, and Paul's brother, Tommy, said a few words during the services. And he talked about Paul as a brother, a husband, a father, a committed family man. But what I wanted to talk about tonight a little bit was his other family, his school family. Paul and I started in education the very same year, 1971. Now, of course, he spent his first 2 years in Orleans Parish at McDonough because Mr. Dagra wouldn't hire him because he didn't cut his hair. I don't know if it is. So when he finally came on with us in 1973 at Chalmette High School, he taught science, and we had a really core group of people there with Wayne Warner, who had become principal in 1973. Paul taught science with his good friend Louis Bowden and Charlie Rabiota. I taught math. Cookie Munt taught English. Jack Serenay was in the math department. So we had a really core group of very young educators, and we all kind of grew up together, and we grew up together in the system. And I have some of the fondest memories. I can remember, at that time, Chalmette High was an all-boys school. And I can remember being in the big open math center. 300 boys, just think, 300 teenage boys, all in different groups. But we gave a little small portion of that center to the science department. Felt sorry for them, gave them a little piece of it at the end. And one of the subjects Paul taught was aerospace. So in order to get at me and Lynette Wise, who was the department chairman at that time, for those of you who remember back, he'd have his class make these little paper airplanes. And sometime right in the middle of us having class, boom, they come flying over the cabinets into our classroom. So we had, a really, really good time with that. We also, at those times in the 70s, when we had over 1,700 boys at that school, we were in 11 Quad A, the sports league, with all of the Catholic schools. So we had, every Friday night, our home games, I mean, the stadium was packed. So we had a core group of us that did the same thing every Friday night. We taught all day long, we put our stuff down, we got the concession stands ready, we did the concession stands, we collected all the money from both sides, we walked into Wayne Warner's office, dumped it in the middle of the floor, left a few of us counting money, then we opened up the gym for a sock hop. You know, Paul was part of that group. We'd go till 2 a.m. from early that morning, teaching, working the ball games, and then having sock hops for the kids at that time. And I guess I remember one day, you know, we talk about Jill is his older daughter. I remember the day she was born. He was teaching science class. It was Valentine's Day that year. And she came several weeks early. So we had to get Paul out of class. Come on, he says, hey, it can't be Debbie. We can't be having a baby. It's too early. So we had to rip him out of class to go to the birth, I guess, of his older daughter. So we grew up, I guess, so close as a unit at that school with a lot of people who are still with the school system today. Then Paul became a counselor at Chalmette High School. Then he moved over to St. Bernard High, where he was the principal. And he did an unbelievably great job as the principal of St. Bernard High School. In fact, one of our supervisors, Tessie White, was one of his students. She has fond memories of him making her principal for the day and sat in on a conference, as she tells it, with a very irate parent. And there's Paul turning to Tessie and saying, now tell us what you would do in this situation. So he was always the teacher. But, you know, we watched his girls grow up, Jill and Aaron. They were a part of every school within our school system they attended. They went to Chalmette High. They were both on the homecoming courts, very, all, you know, cheerleaders, interested, doing lots of things. He was so proud of them and of his 5 grandchildren, Avery, who's now at Trist, and Lane, and Reese, and Paige, and Scotty, who are at Davies. And you just can't imagine the picture on a Friday night at a football game of all 5 of them running around the track as we're still playing ball. So for 50 years, he's been there doing that. When Katrina hit, you know, it completely devastated this parish and this school system, and we had to rebuild from scratch. There were, I guess, lots of surprises, but surprises in people too. There were people who I thought maybe we could count on, who would be really the backbone of the rebuilding, and because of their personal stresses and problems, couldn't quite handle it. And then there were people that you go to war with. The people who were there. Paul was one of those people. And Paul was an integral part of our rebuilding with Katrina. And then with every organization that we would have, right after Katrina, formed a Lions Club for the employees because we were going to get, to be honest, money from them to help rebuild. We go to Paul. Paul, you need to be president of Lions Club. 15 years he's been president of our employees' Lions Club. Just turned it over to Leanne Harleton, who's carrying that on now. The credit union. He was on the credit union board. Rises to be the president of our credit union board. Athletic director for the parish. So over, not only was he the athletic director for the parish, but he was integral in the State Athletic Directors Association, which helped tremendously. Personnel directors. Paul was a member of a very elite group of, 69 school districts, so 69 personnel directors. He joins that group when he became personnel, took over the presidency of that for a long time. So every school, every group, every organization he belonged to, he took on a leadership role for the good of our kids here in St. Bernard. And he and I talked a lot over the past, I guess, last 2 or 3 years as he's been fighting this illness so hard, and he would come and he'd say, you know, Voce, he says, all these people want me to retire. They say, retire, enjoy yourself. He says, well, I can't say what he said on TV, but it was basically, what do you think I'm going to do if I retire? I said, no, Granberry, you can't retire. You know, we need you here. And he says, look, you know, after his family, because he was a tremendous family man, this school system was his life. And he had no intention of retiring. He said to me, you know, a few months ago or less than a year ago, he said, Voce, he says, you know, he says, I want to make it to 50 years. I said, okay, Paul, so we're going to do it together. So in this past June, we both ended our 50th year in education. So he made his final goal here in our school system. So I guess I say to him tonight, you know, goodbye, my friend, my brother, and till we meet again in a better place. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. Well said. Paul was the ultimate gentleman, too.
Yes.
Anyone else? Mr. Long?
One thing I learned about Paul over the years was no matter what role he had, he tried to portray himself as a rough kind of guy, but deep down, he was very good-hearted. And to say he was dedicated, that's a huge understatement, because, I mean, we all saw it when he was making presentations here sometimes. You could tell he didn't feel good, and he might have just had treatments or whatever, but he always, he wanted to get his job done, and I think he did a fantastic job in all the positions he had. And like Ms. Voce said, he's a true leader, and he's going to be very, very missed by this school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Anyone else? Mr. Warner?
Yeah, I just, you know, I was one of those 300 students throwing airplanes, Ms. Voce, back in the day.
I always knew that, Sean.
You know, and Paul and Louie, let's face it, they're up in heaven right now, and they're forming the Shaman High Alumni Association, and they're
Yes.
trying to get a golf tournament going up there. So that's where I think he's at. He's definitely in heaven.
He graduated from Nichols, but when he came to Shelmet High, and we formed that Shelmet High Alumni Association, we have a designation in it which is an ABC member, an alumni by choice. So we both became that, and he has done a tremendous job with the Alumni Association as well.
Yeah, he definitely bleeds maroon and white, that's for sure. Thank you, Mrs. Dysoff.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Anyone else? Ms. Lemoyne?
And Sean, like you said, you were one of his 300 students. I was one of the teachers that he hired, and he always, from day one as an employee in the school system, always had a way of making me feel so special and valued, just like he did with everyone, you know, truly supported. And like Ms. Voce said, despite any health struggle or stress that he had in his own life, he always had a smile on his face, and you could just tell how much he cared for each and every one of the students and employees. So I will forever hold him in my heart as a true mentor and inspiration. So deepest condolences to his family during this time.
Anyone else? Ms. Voce, I just wanted to say, I was one of those kids in '73 at the sock hops, and we appreciated y'all.
It was a long day and night.
Yeah, that it was. And it was just a pleasure to work with Paul. He was, like I said, just such a gentleman and a trooper coming into work when he wasn't feeling well. But he was determined and truly dedicated, and he did bleed maroon and white. And again, he's going to be sorely missed. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Before we go on to the next item on the agenda, I'd like to take this opportunity at this time to thank Ms. Voce, our superintendent, Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Jason Dewey, and all of our principals and teachers through this past crisis of Hurricane Ida, and on top of COVID, when it was really, it peaked. Ms. Voce, Mr. Fernandez, and Mr. Dewey were absolutely dedicated and checking all our schools after the hurricane to make sure that, you know, which ones needed attention as far as damage and, you know, maintenance, and made sure that we had everything at the schools, along with our principals and teachers. Principals went in on Thursday, the teachers came in on Friday to make sure everything was ready for yesterday to open, you know, after Hurricane Ida. And we want to just sincerely thank y'all for your true dedication always. And we appreciate your putting your personal issues aside and being here for the school system, and to make sure again that our students were able to come to school yesterday, and along with our teachers and staff members. And also a thanks to Lexi, who helped us with the virtual meetings that we had. We appreciate your help, and Barry and Jack and Mary. Thank you very much for your technological assistance with us all, and making sure that we were able to have a special meeting, and we were able actually to interview candidates for the school board member that Kelly Lee just took her seat. And so we appreciate all of y'all's efforts, and always working truly in unity. So thank you to each and every one of y'all. We really appreciate it. Okay. Next item on the agenda. Anyone else? I'm sorry. Okay. Next item on the agenda is nutrition and physical activity wellness policies. And with us tonight, we have Miss Joni Bloom, who Joni's been with us for many, many years, and she will be retiring at the end of the month. And again, Joni, we appreciate all of your dedication and efforts.
Thank you.
And always. And we want to wish you a very happy retirement.
Well, thank
And
you.
we want to welcome Mr. Morrell, who is the new supervisor of nutrition and food services. Ms. Bloom.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Morrell.
Yeah. Okay, tonight we're going to, in your packet, you will see the updated wellness policy. And we have a little short PowerPoint presentation to tell you about it, and to talk about what's coming, with some new and exciting things that are coming up with wellness policy. So Mr. Morrell's going to be our helper tonight. All right, of course you know that we have a wellness policy which has been mandated by the federal government, but the reason why a wellness policy was implemented by USDA is because when children are nourished properly and they get physical activity during the day, all studies show that they have better grades in school, they remember what was taught in class, they behave better in class, and they miss less school time. So the emphasis on good, healthy habits is something that helps in academic life. All right, and this is how we create a healthy school environment. So the wellness policy helps create a healthy school environment with in these categories. We focus on nutrition education, physical activities, the foods and drinks that are sold to students, the food and beverages not sold but provided to students in things like class parties and activities, marketing our food and informing the community, leadership, and more. Okay, and in order to have a wellness policy, that is all-inclusive. These are the kind of people that we ask to join our team. And you can see that it goes across the board of all members of our school community and also our larger community, our St. Bernard Parish community. Okay, so how do we get this information and how do we form committees and update our wellness policy every year? Well, this year, we introduced our wellness policy updated at the administrators' meetings in July, then tonight at your school board meeting, and then the school nutrition department meetings in November will be exposed to and discuss the wellness policy. And then in January, on the 18th, we'll have a school community meeting for people who are representatives from the school community as well as students, and then of course any community members who might like to attend. All right, and so you may read the full policy, you have those in your packet, but the full policy and the assessment surveys are on our website under food services and under helpful resources. All right, and just a little bit of background, the federal government and state requirements. In Louisiana, Act number 331 passed in 2018 talks about smart snacks in schools. Usually when I come to these meetings, I usually bring some smart snacks examples. This year, unfortunately, our vendors have been kind of busy with hurricanes, so we haven't been able to do that. But the smart snack examples of what they are comprised of is also in your packet, and you can see the regulations that talk about smart snacks and what are smart snacks in our schools. Okay. All right, and the wellness policies encourage adequate time for school meals. They use healthy meal preparation techniques, so we are lowering the fat, we lower the salt, we try to get as many fruits and vegetables that are fresh as we can, and we try to encourage the children to choose healthy choices in our school meals. And then, of course, trying to serve healthy foods at school parties during the school days, too. All right. And this is why the importance of nutrition education and promotion. It gives students the knowledge, skills, and confidence to make healthy eating choices in their life. When they come to school, they have breakfast that we serve and lunch that we serve. But we also want to impact their wellness and their lives so that when they leave our school systems, they will be able to make healthy choices for their life. And these are some ways we promote, down there on the pink, promote nutrition education in our schools. We do have taste tests in our cafeterias. We have nutrition ed lessons, and we also have food demonstrations throughout the year at various school sites for our students. And all of our schools are team nutrition schools, which means that they are eligible for information, activities. All our teachers are able to access all of that, as well as occasionally we do have team nutrition grants that we apply for and we have been awarded. All right. Then the second part, if you notice, is the physical activity and physical education. The recommendation is 60 minutes or more each day for children, and these are some examples of physical activities that can occur. Okay, food marketing. So the daily menu notifications are posted on the website. I'm sure you all are familiar with that. We also have the daily menus are posted in the school cafeteria, so when students enter the school cafeteria, they can see before they enter the line what I have to choose from. And then, of course, we try to always encourage positive images of healthy eating. All right. And the public involvement, this is something that's going to be really innovative. I'm very excited for. We are required to do an assessment every 3 years. In the past, we did not have the ability to do like a Survey Monkey or a Google, survey to easily send it to our parents and teachers and community members. But we are going to do that this year. We're actually working on that right now. And so all of the statistics can be generated and compiled, and we can, by developing these assessments, and they're easily accessed on somebody's phone or, in the schools for the students, then we can really get a handle on what our students' needs are, and also how we can move forward to make our wellness program as beneficial to our students as possible. And as you know, Mr. Morrell now is going to be the coordinator of the wellness policy. I'm leaving it in very good hands. I feel really good that he's going to take over. I know he's going to do a wonderful job. He's young, he's innovative, he's got great ideas, and that's a wonderful thing for me. As I leave the school system that I've been in for my whole adult life, I have to say, it has been a joy, and it's never been a job. It's always been just wonderful. So as I leave you, I would like to thank you and let you know that I won't be far away. I'll always be here if I'm needed, but I really want to thank you for this opportunity. As a teacher, I loved my years teaching. Ms. Voce drafted me after Katrina to do this job, and I've absolutely loved every minute of it. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for putting up with me. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Does anyone have any questions about the wellness policy or about what's going on in the schools right now with our school nutrition and with our children's food and lunches and breakfast?
Thank you, Ms. Bloom.
You're
And
welcome.
Welcome, Mr. Morrell. Again. Okay, Mr. Long, did you have a question?
Well, first off, Ms. Bloom, thank you for your years of service.
You're welcome.
We really appreciate all your hard work and dedication.
Thank you.
You've done a fantastic job also in every position that you've had, and we appreciate it. Getting back to the policy here just for a moment.
Yes.
You said we assess this our system every 3 years, but this wellness policy looks like it was established in 2006, and it was just updated in 2019.
That is the federal regulation.
Okay.
So in 2006, it came into regulation that we have to have a wellness policy for our school system. And so every year, now last year, the wellness policy update was waived because of COVID. So in March, when we closed down for COVID, until this year, we will be, starting it over again.
So this is an annual thing?
Yes, it's an annual thing to update it. It has to be assessed every 3 years, although we do assess it every year and have a wellness committee every year. And so that's where, that's the explanation for that.
Okay, and I know kids can be very picky about what they eat. And, when you say cutting calories and fat and sugars and all of that, I'm just wondering, do the kids enjoy most of the food?
Well, that's the trick. And you have to make it so that the kids want to eat it while doing those things. And that is the trick of it. Some of our menus are really popular. Some of the menus we need to work on a little bit, to try to get a little bit more participation. But for the most part, we always are working on those menus. So, and we are mandated to lower the sugar, lower the fat, have like whole grain rich food. That's a mandate of the regulations of child nutrition programs. So we do work together with, the kids, the communities, the principals, to make sure that we try to bring all that into focus. But yeah, that is true.
And do we still serve pizza sometimes?
We do.
Okay. I
We
know
have-
it
we
was quite
do.
a few years ago, you mentioned that pizza was actually a very nutritious
Well,
meal, correct?
The pizza that we have is whole grain rich. It's made by a company, the one we're buying now is made by a company in Texas. They make child nutrition, products, and all of our vendors make child nutrition products. So when you go to a store and you see a certain brand of something, like Doritos Doritos, those nacho chips that kids love. We have those on our menu, but they're child nutrition. So they're baked, they have less sodium in them, and so they look like the bags, and, they taste good, but they're made for child nutrition programs. So the pizzas, actually, Shelmet High has a pizza line every day. And the other schools, we put them on the menus at least once during a menu cycle. There are pizzas, but it is pizza that's healthier. It's not the high amount of sodium and fat that you probably would buy in a frozen pizza at a grocery store.
Try to trick them.
It's what?
We try to trick them.
Oh, okay.
Where
I
can we
wouldn't
buy
say
this tricky food?
Well, sometimes the vendors will put out more healthier choices at the, at the grocery stores, but I think they cater to the general public. The things that we get are for child nutrition, because if they don't meet the compliance, we can't buy them. And so they sort of have two different lines, but all the brands that you see at the grocery store, those are the brands we use.
Okay.
Interesting.
Thank you,
Okay,
Ms.
Mr.
Bloom.
Warner?
Thank you, Ms.
Ask the speaker.
Dyson.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner?
Thank you, Mrs. Dysart. Do we need a motion on the update on this policy?
You need an approval on the policy?
Yes.
Yes.
Before I offer the motion, I just wanted to thank you, Ms. Bloom. I know you loved your job because you did such a great job at it. And I just wanted to thank you for your service here.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate it.
I think you did a great job. We do a great job on nutrition, but Mr. Morrell, I hope you're going to do a little bit better job with our students on the physical activity part. I think we do great on nutrition, but I think our kids need to move a little bit more. That's just my personal opinion. So, and I know that's tough for you to do as the, in your role. But anyway, I think that's one of the things we have to kind of focus on our kids are getting more exercise and being involved more and doing a little bit more walking and, calisthenics and that type of stuff. But I'll make a motion that we send to the full board with a recommendation and update on the nutrition and physical activity wellness policy.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Warner. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Smith. Thank you again, Ms. Bloom, and happy retirement to you, and welcome, Mr. Morrell. Okay, there is a motion on the floor and a second. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, roll call vote, please, Ms. Ojo.
Mr. Campbell.
4.
Mr. Egan.
4.
Ms. Jackson.
4.
Ms. Lee Bowman. Ms. Lemoyne.
4.
Mr. England. Ms. Dysart.
4.
Mr. Long.
4.
Mr. Smith.
4.
Mr. Warner.
4.
And Ms. White.
4.
Votes 11-0.
Thank you, Ms. Foche. Next item is an update of buildings and grounds. Good evening, Mr. Dewey.
Yeah, I've asked Mr. Dewey to come tonight just to give us a little bit of an update of what has happened with Hurricane Ida and the great work that he and his maintenance crew have done over the past couple of weeks in getting our schools ready, and to tell you a little bit about where we are now.
Thank you very much for having me here, everyone, and I appreciate it. I just want to give a brief summary of what we have done in the recovery effort after Hurricane Ida, go through some specifics also, and then, of course, take any question that you guys have, okay? Of our 15 active buildings, obviously all were without power for somewhere between 4 to 9 days in the aftermath of the hurricane. That did leave our buildings, obviously, without the building automation, HVAC, and normal climate controls that we would have in place. As a result of that, all buildings were impacted to some degree by condensation. We also had some isolated roof leaks, wind-driven water puddling in and around doorways and some windows. We also had, obviously, tree and landscaping damage. We had miscellaneous damage to siding, gutters, some rooftop equipment like ventilation hoods and things of that nature. I'm very, very happy to say, though, as a whole, we had relatively minor damages or impacts to our school system, with one or two very specific exceptions, which I'll get into in just a minute. But by and large, our buildings just weathered this thing extremely well. We obviously went back to school yesterday. We've had a very successful return as far as maintenance and facilities go, and we are continuing to, isolate minor problems and take care of those on a day-by-day basis. Getting into some of the specific or more significant impacts, we did have a temporary roof in place in a couple of key spots at St. Bernard Middle School, which was actually the result of Hurricane Zeta from last year. That temporary roofing is scheduled to be completely re-roofed as soon as all items are in place to complete that project, and we hope to have that complete by the end of the year. So that situation, though, left that temporary roofing there, which was not sufficient to weather 120, 130 plus mile an hour winds. As a result, that was damaged and allowed for significant water inundation into St. Bernard Middle School, specifically in one of the instructional areas as well as the gymnasium area. So we did take considerable water inundation and impacts there. Fortunately, we were able to partner with Emergency Restoration Incorporated, which has been someone we've used in the past. They were able to commit a large number of resources to us right away. They were able to extract the water, dry the building. We also partnered with Fisher Roofing, who came in and repaired and or replaced the temporary roofing to get that building dried in so we wouldn't have any further impacts. And I'm happy to say at this point that building is in very good shape, received students yesterday and today, and we are in a very secure situation for them now. And we were able to inspect it fully, have emergency restoration evaluated, obviously for safety and sanitation, and everything is good to go at that school right now. Another significant impact that we did have was at Araby Elementary School. We did take some wind-driven water into our library areas there. What it was the result of a waterproofing membrane that failed on one of our exterior walls. The wall was fine, but there is waterproofing that's there from construction, and apparently it was overwhelmed by the significant amount of time, wind, and water that hit it. So we did take some water into the library. Fortunately, from like a book standpoint and equipment standpoint in the library, we're just fine. We were able to get emergency restoration to partner with us and our people and remediate that immediately, so we didn't take any major damages inside of there, but it was something that we did have to respond to in that way. Additionally, ERI assisted my maintenance crews with miscellaneous evaluations across the district. Anywhere that we took any type of wind-driven rain or water, we wanted to make sure it was safe and sanitary for returns, so they helped us with that. And then cumulatively, the maintenance crew cleared about 300 cubic yards of storm damage. That included things like at Araby Elementary School, we had about a 50-foot pine tree from a neighboring property that fell across some of our fencing and blocked part of our parking lot in that area. We went in and took that out, obviously, and got it removed. We did that sort of thing across the entire district, just any types of trees, shrubbery, debris, vegetation, things of that nature that we had. We got that out, we got it removed, made sure that all of our buildings were clean and ready for return at that point. We did evaluate any visible damages. We are continuing some of those evaluations. Rooftop equipment, we have, honestly, we have about 22 acres of rooftops district-wide to comb through, so we're still in that process, but we have been able to evaluate anything major or significant right away. Unfortunately, we just don't really have that, with the exception of St. Bernard Middle School, which has been addressed. Currently, the biggest issue with one of these things for us is that all of our buildings now, which is a good thing, they're automated. They have a lot of HVAC controls that are computer controlled, lots of sensors, lots of valves that actuate based off of current conditions, humidity. Those types of things don't always respond the best to long or even short power outages. So we have gone through them. We've restored all of our HVAC systems. We do have some zone issues, which means maybe one area is a little warmer than we're used to or a little colder than we're used to, and we're working with all of our partners and contractors to get those issues resolved right away. And we feel, over the next week to 2 weeks, we should have those issues fully resolved as well, but nothing that is causing significant impairment to our buildings and certainly doesn't prohibit us from doing business as usual. That being said, that kind of sums up the large piece. Of course, we had some miscellaneous, fence damage where a tree may have fallen or a branch may have fallen on a tree, some gutters, some downspouts. Minor things, though, as a whole. We were extremely fortunate across the entire district to have such minimal damages as a district. So that is just a brief summary. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions anybody has. Please feel free.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dewey.
Yes, ma'am.
You've done a wonderful job of making sure our buildings and grounds are ready for our students, and we appreciate all of your tremendous efforts and your staff members. We appreciate it greatly. Thank
Absolutely.
you
I would be
very much.
Be very remiss if I didn't say the same. My staff was fantastic. I had a large number of my employees, despite personal damages to their homes and issues, that were here, the day after or within 48 hours of the hurricane passing, and just worked nonstop with me over the last 2 weeks. We're very fortunate to have people that are that committed.
Thank you again, Mr. Dewey. Okay, Mr. Long.
Yes, Mr. Dewey, you mentioned condensation. And
Yes, sir.
It makes me think about the pool. How did the pool at Shelmet High School?
Fortunately, the pool fared very well. We had no significant impacts to the pool. It's been fully inspected, and all pumps and filtration has been reactivated. Chlorination levels are all within limits and safe for swimming. We've had one of our partners that services that pool come out and check it fully, and we're in very good shape with the pool.
So without power, it wasn't circulating or anything, so
Correct.
No
We were without
major
power
problem.
in that building for about 4 days, actually. I'm sorry, but that, fortunately, with the amount of chlorination and balance that we had prior to the power loss, we were able to sustain it. We were able to check on it regularly, and we never did reach any type of critical levels with that. So we were in safe parameters the entire time.
So all in all, we did rather good parish-wide.
Oh, extremely well, yes, sir.
That's great. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Anyone else?
I
Mr.
have
Warner?
a question for Ms. Vocek. Are we gonna, do we have to file a claim? Is the damage significant enough to where we may have to file a claim on any of our properties?
We always file a claim. And I do want to say, Richie Clemens is sitting right out here, and immediately the day after the storm, he's texting me. He had already put in the claim and notified our insurance company. The adjusters have come out. Jason, I think you've walked some of the buildings with the adjusters already, pointing out where the damages are and doing a complete assessment. And what will happen is anything, and of course we have large deductibles, but anything, the roof at St. Bernard Middle has already been covered because of the prior storm, but the temporary roof that we had to replace, what our insurance company will not cover, then we file the FEMA claim with it. So we should be fine from, a monetary standpoint, whether it be just the insurance or a combination of insurance and claiming through FEMA whatever the insurance does not cover. So all that's in the works already. David and his crew have filed with FEMA to get that process rolling, and Jason has been meeting with the insurance adjusters to go through the process we need to first with that.
Thank you, Ms. Vocek.
Were there any other questions at this time or comments? Mr. Long?
Just a comment. I'd like to thank Mr. Clements for being on top of that. It's not unusual for Mr. Clements. He's always seemed like he's always ahead of the game and looking out for our best interests. So thank you, Mr. Clements. Thank you, Ms. Dyson.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
And
Okay.
And if I
Ms.
may,
Winter?
you know, when Jason talked about the buildings being out of power for a varying number of days, I would just like to mention Curtis Navis from Entergy, who actually runs the crews on the ground and does the real work of getting the distribution lines, getting everything up and running. He was in constant contact with us, really, I think 24/7. We were texting, we were talking, we had long conversations, he and I, and he did an incredible job. Once he got the hospital up and running, which was the first priority and such, then the next priority, you know, along with the first responders, were to do the areas where our schools are. So I don't know if anybody kind of noticed, but as neighborhoods were coming up, they were coming up surrounding our schools. So he would go, okay, today at 8:30 tonight, we're going to flip this, and you should see power in such and such, such and such, and such and such school. So due to his tremendous efforts, I think it minimized a lot of the damages, because as Jason has talked about with the condensation and the way all these sophisticated systems are now, when you're lacking that climatized environment in our schools now or in any large building, you're worried about the damage that will occur to not only the building structure itself, but the contents within it as well. So I just wanted to recognize Curtis, because he really, really did an unbelievable job here those few days after the storm. I think Jason can attest to that as well.
Absolutely. He was fantastic. He was a great partner through the whole thing.
Thank you, Ms. Boche. Anyone else? Ms. Lemoyne?
Just wanted to again thank you, Jason, and your entire crew. We know that you all have put in an incredible amount of time and effort during a very trying time when you and your families were also experiencing, you know, loss and destruction in your own homes. So thank you for really your stepping up to the plate and for your commitment and dedication. And you certainly inspired a lot of confidence tonight with that very thorough report. So thank you for all of your hard work and your team's hard work.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, special thanks to Curtis Mavis, as Ms. Boche said. You want him on your team, and you saw it, and he was very instrumental in helping us along. And again, Mr. Dewey, thank you and your staff. Great job. We appreciate everything.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Dysart. Thank you very much.
Okay, before we go on to the next item, I'd like to take this opportunity, and I should have done this before, but to thank Miss Cindy England, who helped prepare a little reception for tonight before the meeting for Miss Bowman. Cindy, you always do a great job, and we truly appreciate it. And Angie Berthau, thank you so much for all your assistance throughout this whole crisis also. You've been there for us, and we appreciate you too. Thanks again. We are just blessed to have wonderful, wonderful people to be a part of the school system. Thank you. Okay, next item is education. Ms. White?
Yes. 4.1 on the agenda is pupil progression. And to present, we have Ms. Leanne Holt.
Hello, how's everybody doing? Good. I want to re-welcome Ms. Lee Bowman to the board. Appreciate your commitment to that.
Yes, thank you very much.
I come before you every year to talk about the pupil progression plan, which is due October 1st. I come to this meeting, and I'll be here in 2 more weeks to get it approved finally, okay? But in your packet, there's a draft copy of the pupil progression plan. Let me explain a little bit about the pupil progression plan. The state requires that we do one every year, and basically, years ago, we used to kind of write our own pupil progression plans. It was a little bit simpler. Well, actually, this is really simpler than what we used to do in the past, because now the state gives us the regulations and the requirements of pupil progression, and then we add what we do in addition to that in St. Bernard Parish, or to coordinate or to complement what they tell us we have to do. So if you look at this plan, anything that's in black is from the state, and anything that's in blue is what we added to either complement some of the regulations or to say something extra that we did. But basically, it talks about kindergarten, that you have to be 5 before September 30th. It gives you all those regulations. It talks about the summer programs and how we should work the summer programs. It talks about transitional 9th grade, credit recovery. But the big thing in this pupil progression plan is for 4th grade, and actually for 3rd grade. Actually, that's the only change in it this year. Last year, we did not give a LEAP test. So it was waived that whoever came to us as a 5th grader, an incoming 5th grader, or an incoming 9th grader, I'm sorry, 9th grader, who had not taken the LEAP, they have to be tested, okay? But last year they waived that policy because of COVID. Well, it's back in the pupil progression plan this year, and we do have to test those kids who are coming in from another school system or who did not take the test. Now, the other thing is for 4th grade and 3rd grade, they give you a list of all the kids who did not make basic or above on at least 2 areas, and that's ELA, math, science, and social studies. If they did not score basic or above in 2 areas, we have to do an individual academic plan for each of those children. And we have to meet with the parent. We have to make a plan to give them some additional help during the school year, and then that plan stays with them until they become basic in the subject in which they were not basic. Okay? For 3rd grade, we don't have to do the plan, just for 4th grade, but we have to identify those kids to give them other help during the school year. And that's basically what it is. If you look at it, it's just whatever's in black is what the state tells us we have to do, and then the blue is what we either added to it or whatever.
Do we have any questions from the board? John?
I'll make a motion that we recommend this to the full board, but I have one question.
Sure.
With the pandemic last year, do you have a lot of students? You have a lot more students that you're working on that individual?
You'd be surprised. It's not as many as I thought. It's a lot, but it's not as many as I thought, to be honest with you. But we were able to get the AIPs done for every student so that each child has a plan. And basically, we have to follow the plan. During the school year, it basically requires that they give up maybe 1 or 2 days of cultural arts a couple of times a week so that they go to extra help during that time. But they still have to have their other subjects and the other work on level in 5th grade. But that's just to give them extra help.
Okay, thank you. Carly, you had a question?
No, I was just going to say.
Oh, okay. All right. Diane?
Diane?
I have a question. So the students, you said, who go at cultural arts time to get the additional help that they need in order to pass the basic, or to reach basic, so they're taken away from cultural arts and then they go on it to get additional help. Who is giving this additional help?
We do it a variety of ways. Sometimes it's the Title I aid. Sometimes it's the interventionist that we have at the school. It's
So it's
a mixture of
interventionist.
things that we do with the kids.
Okay.
But they do get additional help.
Okay. And then they get retested?
Every year they're going to be retested. And suppose you had a basic and ELA in math, and you got an approaching basic in science, approaching basic in social studies. You have to stay with an AIP until you get a basic in science and a basic in social studies. So at the end of a 5th grade year, if they got a basic in social studies, then they're out of social studies, but then they're still in for science when they go to middle school.
So they're meeting with the interventionists throughout the whole year till the following
It's
year?
either interventionist or Title I aid.
Or Title I, okay.
Whatever. The principal makes a decision as to what's the best course of action for their school.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Halton.
Do we have any other questions?
I have a question. So I had a call.
Yes.
One of a parent reached out to me about a grandparent because of Hurricane Ida. Her grandkids were displaced and they're currently staying with her, but they were wanting to know about the enrollment in our school here
Okay,
in St.
tell them to
Bernard.
call the school, whichever school district they are located, with the grandparent. And that school will call Angie's office, and then Angie will contact Ms. Siebert, who's in charge of that kind of when people are displaced, and she will get in touch with that parent.
So
So
isn't
tell them to
it,
call
it's
the
still
school.
that they're required to have to live in the parish, correct?
Actually, this is extenuating circumstances. Ms. Voce, you may want to pick up on this.
Are you talking about a student who has left our parish to go somewhere else, or someone who was in another parish who
From
is
another
coming to
parish
us?
coming to us.
Okay, well, I thought I had responded to that. If we have any displaced students who are coming, in fact, I don't know if I brought it down here with me, but we have already enrolled, it's about 10 kids from Terrebonne, St. John, St. Charles Parish. So if they were leaving those parishes because of the storm and they are now residing in St. Bernard with a grandparent or with friends or anyone, then what they need to do is to call our office, 301-2000, Child Welfare and Attendance Office. Tell that person we will call them in, and Debbie Siebert, who handles these things, will meet with the parent, go through the registration process quickly with us, and assign them to the school in the area in which they're currently residing, and we'll get them in immediately. So like I said, we're only in the second day, and I know, I just got the list this afternoon.
She registered 2 this afternoon sometime. when I
Well,
was
we
there.
have a total of
10.
approximately 10, if I remember, and I actually thought I had brought that list with me, but oh, here it is, right in front of me. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, there's 8 in a variety of elementary, middle, and our high school. So with 3 more. So how about 11? So I've got 11. So we registered 8 yesterday and 3 additional ones today. So we have a total of 11 students from those parishes. So anyone who's listening out there, if a student has been displaced from another school system, just call this office, phone number 301-2000, Child Welfare and Attendance, or you just tell the receptionist who answers the phone what you're looking for. They'll direct you. We will meet with them immediately and get them into school immediately, and we will be able to offer help with uniforms and resources and supplies.
And we will, of course, tell them what school they're going to be going to, because it'll be whatever district that person they're living with is in.
Thank you very much.
But some of the people were calling the schools, and then Ms. Voce told them the other day, to tell the school if they called, to call this office, because this office is handling everything.
Right. We figured that we would centralize that process here. Debbie Siebert handles the all of our federal programs, homeless students, those types of things. So we would centralize the registration process here, and she will be able to guide them in every aspect of it, and whatever resources the kids need will be right there and can provide it for them.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Long, you had a question?
Yeah, Ms. Voce, I'm so glad to hear that we are taking in students from other parishes. I can remember after Katrina, our entire student body, who was about 8,000 students, were taken in by other school systems
Absolutely.
in this state and other states.
States throughout the country.
So I'm glad we could return the favor.
Absolutely. So any child who comes into St. Bernard, we will welcome, open arms. Just make that phone call here or come to the office, and we will take care of you immediately.
Thank you.
And the school's noted directive here.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Okay, we have a motion by Sean. Do we have a second? Carly, second it? Do we have to take a vote?
You could do a voice vote, all in
Voice.
favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
All,
Opposed?
anyone opposed?
Okay,
I'll be back in 2
Motion
weeks.
stands. Thank you. See you then. Thank you.
Next item is an insurance item, Mr. Egan.
No, excuse me.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Mr. England.
Right.
So sorry.
That's all right, Ms. Dice. It's a personal
Personnel.
item, because the list is so short, you know.
Skip right over.
I know. this is the first time in years that I saw this so few people, which is good in some respects, because that's telling me that we were staffed properly. And but the only thing that I want to shout out, I asked Ms. Foche to address again, for bus drivers. If we need more bus drivers, then we got to train them, because there's always a need.
We always need bus drivers. We need bus drivers. We have enough that we have every route covered, but we don't have enough substitute bus drivers who will start out with us in that capacity to cover when people are out sick, or if there are specific trips that kids take, then we have to cover routes. So if you wish to be a bus driver, we will train you, teach you, and help you secure the appropriate CDL, the license that would enable you to drive the bus once you're trained. So if you have a desire to be a bus driver, then please give us a call and we can help you with that.
So if you're looking for a job, they're right here. Let's see. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Foche. This is just for information purposes only, so there's no action taken by the board. So,
And the only
good.
thing with Ms. Bloom is not on here, and I think that this was wishful thinking that Dr. Aviota didn't put her retirement date on here, but we'll have it on the regular meeting.
Thank you,
at
Ms.
that
Foche.
point.
Any questions for Ms. Foche? Being none, we'll move on to item number 6. Mr. Egan, it's Insurance Committee.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Oh, these are new machines. Oh, it's working? All right. This is the bid tabulation for the renewal of general liability, auto liability, and legal liability for the period of October the 1st, 2021 through September the 30th, 2022. And we have the Clements and, of course, Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, sir. Okay, as Mr. Egan said, our friends from Clements Insurance are here, Richard and Timothy Clements, to answer all your insurance questions. But in your package, you have proposed renewal for general liability, auto liability, and legal liability, educators' legal liability insurance. As you recall, we participate in a insurance pool called LARMA, which is a pool which includes several Louisiana school districts who pool premiums and cover losses. And we've participated in this pool for quite a while. It's done well for us. And you see on your Exhibit 6.1 the renewal premium that they're proposing for this coming year will be $218,257. I'm reading the wrong one. No, I'm sorry. It was $209,475. That was correct. That was correct the first time. Okay, I want to bring a couple of things to your attention. If you look on the exhibit, it gives you 3-year comparison, the past 2 years in premiums in this current year. And the premium is at the bottom of the second page where it says potential estimated total cost. That is the $209,000. It shows all of the coverages that we have, and all of the coverages are the same as last year except for one. The policy no longer, or the insurance no longer covers cyber liability insurance. Cyber liability insurance has become a big thing over the last few years with all the cyber attacks and that, and it's become so expensive with reinsurance that LARMA will no longer include it in their regular policy. If we wish to have cyber liability insurance, we would have to get a separate standalone policy for that. Now, LARMA has solicited a proposal, but Mr. and Mr. Clements are also trying to get additional proposals to supplement that. And we hope to come to the regular board meeting if it's economically feasible, we'll let you know either way to see how much a premium would be for such cyber liability insurance. We will present that at the regular board. But as of right now, we're recommending that we renew the existing proposal from Lorimer for everything except cyber liability insurance for $209,475. And we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Does anyone have any questions? Ms. Dysart?
Yeah, Mr. Fernandez, in the past, and Mr. Clements, thank you also for your help with the storm and, filing claims already. We appreciate always your assistance also. But on the cyber insurance, had that been included in the past and they just took it out, or has it never been included?
It had been included the last few years. Cyber insurance wasn't included years ago because it wasn't much of an issue. But with all the activity and all the cyber attacks, they included it maybe the last two or three years. They included it as part of the regular package. But now it is getting, I guess, so expensive overall because they're not just insuring us; they're insuring all the school districts that are members of this pool. So it wasn't economical for them in terms of the pool to do it, but they did go out and try to get a proposal for us individually or each school district individually. And we got a proposal which was about $38,000, but we are also investigating other sources to get some other quotes to see if we could get a better offer. But we will, like I said, we will attempt to come back to the regular meeting with that.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez, and thank you, Mr. Clements and Mr. Clements.
Mr. Long?
What exactly is cyber liability? I mean,
Cyber.
how would they, what kind of loss would we have?
Most commonly, what you hear this cyber liability insurance does is if it pays ransom. If somebody encrypts your system, it'll provide money to pay the ransom. It'll also provide money to cover losses if you have any losses, I would imagine, from that. But when you see in the news, oftentimes, when malicious entity comes and encrypts your system, they ask for ransom. And sometimes the insurance will come in and they'll try to see if they can recover your information. And if they can, sometimes it will cover a portion, if not all of the ransom that they're asking.
And we have, last couple of years, we had a limit on the amount of ransom we could pay?
The last couple of years, it was covered within the regular premium. It was just something that was offered as part of the entire package when they offered us a premium. Now you can see the premium went down a little bit from last year to this year, but it doesn't include that cyber insurance. So that means that if it included the cyber insurance, the premium would have probably gone up a lot more because of the reinsurance markets and all that normally happens. So even though we went down, our premiums really went up a little bit, but it doesn't include that additional insurance.
You did say you're going to continue shopping around a little bit?
Yes, sir. We have. They have some.
We got irons in the fire right now.
Irons in the fire.
It's just that we didn't hear until late that they weren't going to include it, because when the number came in, it was astronomical. It went from like $68,000 to $400,000, and from a $25,000 deductible to a $250,000. So Lorimer just couldn't absorb that as they had done in the past.
So you think this is
And it's
something
just a very
important?
difficult product that's out there right now because you see all the activity.
Is this something important that we should have?
It's something that's good to have, and but it's also, as we've been seeing, something that a lot of insurers are declining to cover. A lot of insurers are not offering this coverage anymore because there's such exposure and it's.
Okay, could we ask Ms. Lumetter to come maybe speak a little bit to the security of the system? Because there's two schools of thoughts out there as to whether you should or should not have insurance and if you pay these types of ransoms or not.
But as far as our system goes, Mary, why don't you talk a little bit about what we've been doing and what initially those problems were?
Sure, and one of the main things to understand is school systems in the past that we have seen that have been encrypted, it was local servers on their premises that were encrypted and they couldn't get their data. As I mentioned a couple of months ago when I presented here, we have moved to hosted solutions for just about everything we have. Our student information system, where all the student addresses and phone numbers and parent information is, that's hosted on J-Campus's site. They have security on it. 62 districts in the state use their software. It's secure with them. Our email is hosted by Microsoft. It's secure on their server. It's not on a server in our building. We don't have to worry about securing it. Munis, our financial data, our payroll data, all of our employee payroll data, that's off-site hosted on Munis. We don't have a server here hosted on Munis. Ms. Bloom and Mr. Morell's lunch server with all the student lunch data, that's hosted off-site. So we have every one of our services hosted off-site with the company. The only servers we have on site are actually Mr. Dewey's HVAC servers. And we don't have any secure information that they could encrypt there. We do have some local file servers where teachers have what we call their P drives, their personal drives, but many of our teachers have moved on to Google Drive, and we also offer them Microsoft OneDrive, which is also supported and secured by Microsoft. So how they could hurt us would be if they encrypted data we need, but all of our services are hosted, so they're not really here to be encrypted. So that's a big plus on our side, a very big plus. And we do have a product called Sentinel-1 that we use for security now. It's beyond an antivirus. It doesn't just write definitions for viruses as hackers write viruses and they're trying to keep up with definitions on what they write. It actually watches and looks at behavior of any software or anything that comes on. Even when teachers take their laptops home with them, and if anything happens on their home network, we can, from here, clean it, revert it back to before they have an issue, before they even bring it back on site. Because that's where sometimes people get viruses in their home network. Because we have things so locked down here, they can't get to much here. When they get home on their own network, they could possibly bring things in. So with Sentinel-1, we can clean it before it ever gets to us. And we have automated emails and phone calls and texts that go to our IT staff if something comes up on somebody's machine that we know during the night. We also have a company, it's a server monitoring company that monitors our servers. So if anything happens during the night, they put the ticket in and handle it overnight. So we have a lot of eyes and ears on what we have. We have very little on site to even have to encrypt, or protect.
Well, I'd be interested to see how much this is going to cost, because I'm not convinced that it's something we really need. I hear of ransom, but usually it's large corporations. And
Right.
I don't know, I've never heard of any attacks on smaller entities, like ours. And
They have
I
had
don't know
some
if you
school
guys have
systems,
heard
they
of
have
any,
had some
but-
school systems in the past, but again, it was school systems where they're on-site servers. It got in through someone clicking on a phishing email, and security, people had security that was elevated security. We have locked down. Many of our people don't have access to things they used to have access to. Also, we have something called user account control on all of our teacher laptops now. By that I mean a teacher laptop. In the past, you could maybe bring it home and install your own printer or install some free software on it. You cannot. If the teacher tries to install something on their laptop, it says, user account control is enacted, what's the username, what's the password? You can't do it. And the reason for that is if they click something on the internet and they try to download, if phishing email tries to download software, it blocks it. So we put a lot of measures in place to block the things that are known
So we
security
already
risks.
have protection,
We have those, and
basically, for most
Sentinel
of
One
our
is a big,
systems.
very big layer of protection.
Right,
It's a
right.
very big layer. And any device we can roll back to any point in time where the thing wasn't encrypted. We also have, every 15 minutes, we do a backup on-site in our data center of our few file servers that we have here. Again, that's our teacher P drives and some file servers, but all those things are also on Google and on OneDrive. Additionally, we have a cloud backup that we back up every night to the cloud. So if something was encrypted on site of someone's files, we have backups here, and we have cloud backups.
Okay,
And
thank you.
as far as smaller entities, talk a little bit about what happened a couple of years ago. How many school systems in this state, there were 4 or 5 that were attacked. And there was a
Yes.
state attack force formed. And talk about the entities that ran that.
Yes, there are 4 or 5 school districts in which their servers on site had their financial services, for example, their Munis servers, they had their student information system, they had their email. So when those were encrypted, they couldn't operate. About 4 or 5 districts, but in a lot of those cases, as I said, security, maybe people's logins had a little more secure access to things. So now everyone on our system, access to servers is hard to come by. You know, very few people in this district can even get near or into our server with their login. So even if they know someone's username and password, it's not going to get them very far. So we really have lockdown access to our people, but it did cripple 4 school systems
And
because
these
they
school
couldn't
systems,
get access to any of their data.
did they pay a ransom?
I'm
you
not
know?
sure about that, but the state did send the FBI to school systems. They sent,
They did
other-
a
they
task
sent
force of the
task force,
FBI, the
FBI,
state police.
Homeland Security.
Homeland Security. In fact, they were even in this parish for a while, sent in, and we had to do a massive statewide cleanup. And I don't know if people remember, but we had all kinds of, teachers were complaining,
The teachers
people
will
were
remember.
complaining, but we had to shut a lot down and bring up, and, you know,
Yes,
Mary
and to
is
give it-
more the
yeah.
technical person, and actually bring each of these services up one at a time, and we enacted many more secure services because of that. So we were trying to, as we brought up these new things, to protect what we had, and I think we're doing a really good job of that at this point. And I mean, you never say anything is foolproof, because these guys internationally, you know, you put these, I guess, steps in place, and there's always going to be somebody who is going to find a workaround to something. But so far, we're doing a really good job of protecting our data and our information through these processes.
Right, and just to add on, what Ms. Boche is mentioning is when the 4 other school systems did get encrypted, the state put out a 6-point plan that every school district had to turn the internet off, literally. And our teachers will tell you that we're very unhappy. The internet had to be turned off completely, and you had to bring back one important service at a time. And they gave us a list of 6 critical things that every district had to work through. The first thing was bring back your finance, then bring back your lunch, then bring back your student information system, but not bring back shopping or any website that somebody just might want to go on. So it was strictly curriculum, Learn, Lexia, IXL, that's all people could get to. If they wanted to get to extra sites, we had to only let them get to sites by IP address of the server providing the service, so no one could spoof that site and make us think we were going to something we weren't going to. So it was very strict for a solid year, and the teachers really struggled through it because you really couldn't get to anything unless it was exactly what was scripted in the curriculum. But since then, with all the security measures we put in, with the fact that no one can just download anything onto a laptop. So if they click on a phishing email, it can't download malware, it can't do those kinds of things. We were able to open the internet back up to teachers, but we had to put all those critical security measures in place along the way to feel confident. And then it's not completely wide open. We do have it, you know, it's still very secure, but there's a little more access for teachers to get to things. Even Google was blocked, you know, so we even had Google blocked for a long time.
So hopefully the quotes that we get will come back low, because it sounds like something we may have to look into.
Well, I will say, and if you read, that there's not a lot of money to be made in cybersecurity insurance, and nothing against insurance people, but they do like to make money. So there's not a lot of money to be made in cybersecurity, because you know they're asking for 10, 11 million each time there's an incident. So you pay a little bit of premium, and they have to put out 10, 11 million, so not many companies even want to touch it now. So it is, like you're mentioning, the rates are much higher, and not many companies are wanting to do it. But you do fill out a questionnaire when you apply of all the things you have in place, and that affects your premium.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Egan.
Got any further questions? Oh, excuse me.
I'll make a recommendation. I'll make a motion that we accept the administration's recommendation to renew our general liability, auto, and legal liability insurance to the full board. But Mr. Fernandez, before we vote on that, can you talk a little bit about our credit with Lorimer, the $264,484,
Right.
the
And-
equity that we have, and how that benefits us with Lorimer?
Right. As we discussed in previous years, Loma is a pool of different school districts, which means we're a partial owner of the pool. You can think of it that way. And the pool has a certain performance every year. Sometimes it performs well, sometimes it doesn't. And some years, for the lack of a better term, you can say the pool might make a profit. And it earns equity. The pool gains equity, like a fund balance, you could say. And that fund balance is kind of owned by the members of the pool. Not owned in the sense that we can withdraw it, but owned in the sense that we have an equity stake in this pool. And the way it benefits us is occasionally, and we have discussed this with them for several years, occasionally they'll return a portion of that to the districts in the form of a safety grant, is which they've done. So in the past, we've gotten a safety grant, which is basically a little rebate, which has funded cameras in our buses, cameras in our schools, things related to safety. In other years, like this year, it was used to help limit the increase in the premiums to the members. So our premium did not go up a great deal because they were able to use some of that equity. Well, our current equity in this pool is, equity balance is $264,000. So that is our equity stake in this pool. If we were to leave the pool, then we would lose that equity balance. And that's what we've discussed about in the past. It's something, this pool is good because it performs well. We have a lot of benefits in it that we wouldn't have with conventional insurance. For instance, we have a greater say in terms of settlements if we're sued. We have a greater say in settlements with people. When we have conventional insurance, if we had a deductible of $25,000, we would find that oftentimes someone would sue the school system, and the insurance company would say, we'll settle with you for $25,000. And the people would take it, and they would send us a bill for $25,000. That's not the case with law. We have a say in settlements. We get to use attorneys that we have a stake in naming or have experience with. So that's another benefit that we wouldn't have with conventional insurance. But those are the benefits of Walmart and why we have such good experience, and we recommend renewing with them.
Thank you for that recommendation, Mr. Fernandez, and that explanation also.
Will you finish that? Okay. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Smith.
Just a clarification, so does the motion include getting the additional cybersecurity quote at the regular meeting?
Well, what we're going to do at the regular meeting, we will come back with the quotes. Like I stated, we're going to look at, also it's going to be a cost-benefit decision. We're going to look at the feasibility of it. Our recommendation might very well be at the regular meeting. The best quote we got is $38,000. So it might be a better use of our funds to not get the insurance and just further bolster our security of our internal systems. As Ms. Lametta said, we have come very far in improving our system security over the past 3 years. Many of our systems are hosted. We have very little on site that needs to be protected. So it might be a better use of our funds not to do it. If we get a very reasonable rate from another company, we may recommend it. But we're going to do that at the regular meeting.
Okay. But the present motion is without the cyber at this time.
Yes,
Till we get quotes.
That's correct,
Thank you.
Mr. Dyson.
Any further comments or questions? Please vote your machines.
Won't have
Can't do the machine.
Yeah, we've been here a while.
Because we're spread out.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
All right, up next we have recommendation from the Grass Cutting Services, RFP. We have Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, ma'am. As you know, we contract out our grass cutting services. We have a cycle that we go through for the past several years, basically since the hurricane, maybe a little before the hurricane. And basically what we do is we'll bid out for a 6-year period, a 3-year time period, and then have an option to extend for 3 additional years. We're reaching the end of our current cycle. So we solicited proposals for the next 3 or 6-year cycle. We had a pre-bid conference in August, and it was attended by 6 or 7 companies that wish to provide this service for us. And we had a bid opening on August 24th, and 4 companies have submitted proposals, and they are included, the tabulation is included in your pack. Our grading rubric was based on 3 criteria. One is experience with similar companies such as ours. 2 is ability to do the job, having appropriate staffing and appropriate equipment, and the 3rd was price. So you can see the grading of those 4 companies. And you see, with the exception of 1, the quotes were relatively close. But our recommendation with the highest score, when we took all of the criteria into account, is going to be Lombardo Industries. And their quote is $218,257 a year. Now, this would be for an initial 3-year period, and that's a yearly price. And then at the end of that 3-year period, we would have the option to renew for another 3 additional individual years. So our recommendation is to award the contract to Lombardo Industries for an annual price of $218,257.
Do you know the annual price that we've been paying every year?
The current price is a little bit more than that. I think about $224,000.
All right, does anybody else have any questions? Mr. Long?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the administration's recommendation to award the contract to the highest scoring vendor.
Seconded by Mr. Smith. Any other questions, discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Next item on the agenda, school reports on lockdown drills. Vote.
Okay. Each year by statute, we are required at each of our schools within the first 30 days to have a lockdown drill. And we also have other drills during the year on a regular basis, whether they be fire drills, emergency type drills, but with the kids to have a lockdown drill. And I am required just to inform you that they have or will be done within the specified period of time. So I have a report from each school that these were done, and what usually happens is that kids are trained then if there's, say, an active shooter, or, well, they just know it's a lockdown drill. So they know where to stay in their classroom. The teachers know that over the windows there must be a covering, that doors are locked. And what we then go through is to make sure that everything has been complied with. We try to get into rooms, we try to make sure that everything has been complied with. Because of the storm, we have 2 schools who will finish that drill this week. All of the other ones have done it, and I have reports from them, and in some cases we will have, say, a sheriff's department deputy who will come and do it with us, and they will go through and make sure that all the measures are in place. Things went extremely well. I think the kids are used to doing this now each year, and so we have complied with our state mandate to have those particular drills.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. Questions, comments? Mr. Long?
Ms. Voce, do we still have fire drills?
Well, we have, because of COVID, modified fire drills that the state fire marshal has allowed. It's a fire drill without actually leaving the building itself and mixing and mingling all the kids. So what they do is the kids know the procedures. We do the fire drill, but we then talk with them in class about what happens now, what you do. So we walk them or talk them through the process, but we don't have the actual physical drill because of the COVID situation. And those have been approved and regulations have been set down from the state fire marshal as to compliance with those drills.
Okay, thank you.
Or are there any other questions or comments on the lockdown drills? Okay, there being none, we'll move on to the next item, a revision of the school calendar 2021, 2022. Ms. Boche?
Okay. In your packet, I've given you some background information that you can read at your leisure, but I'm going to point out a couple of paragraphs in these particular documents that I gave you. The first one is Revised Statute 17154.1. The state of Louisiana mandates for public schools throughout the state to have a certain number of instructional minutes per year. And those, believe it or not, and we've talked about it many, many times, it's 63,720 instructional minutes per year. School systems have the latitude to determine the number of days and then the length of their day, so the number of instructional minutes per day. So some school systems, you may have 177 days, some might have 178, some may have a greater or lesser amount, some might have during that day 360 minutes, some may have 370. Some schools are in for a 7-hour day, some for a 7.5-hour day. So you have some latitude within your school calendars as long as when you total up the instructional minutes, it adds up to 63,720 instructional minutes. All right, then if you look at this revised statute, a couple of things happened over the years when they first passed this. And I'm going to point out to you, if you look at it under A3, the little spot I have highlighted, they give you some exceptions that you might have to the instructional minutes. The first one says if you have a natural disaster that occurs within the last 30 days of the school year and you don't have time to make it up, that the state superintendent and the Bessie board can waive some of those minutes. Okay? Now, let's think about Hurricane Ida. We're not in the last 30 days of the school year. So that exception doesn't apply. If you look under 5, where I'll highlight it, effective for the 2005-2006 school year, that was put in for us and for the districts impacted by Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. So under Section 5 it says because of a natural disaster you can waive instructional minutes, but only that school year, so that doesn't apply. All right, then you go on the second page under subsection 6, and if you say effective for the 2016-17 school year and thereafter, that was put into the statute by legislators after the big floods, that affected the Baton Rouge area and those areas in that school year. And the exception that was put in for them is if schools shared facilities. So to get your schools back up and running, maybe you had 5 buildings that weren't usable, so you platooned kids. And you had to put 2 groups of kids in the same building, so you had a shortened day. So this gave you the latitude to waive some of the instructional minutes for that school year. So the bottom line is, in statute, in law, there are only 2 ways that instructional minutes can be waived. One is if the catastrophe happens in the last 30 days, And secondly, if it happens anytime during the year and you're forced to share a facility. Neither of those applies to us for Hurricane Ida. Now, as you well know, I sit on the Bessie board. I have gotten at least 300 emails and counting from teachers all over the place and employees saying, please waive our instructional minutes. Bessie does not have the ability to waive instructional minutes, except in these two instances. So if it happens the last 30 days, then the school system can give their plan to the state superintendent and the Bessie board. Or if you're sharing facilities because of it, that school system can give their plan to the state superintendent and the Bessie board. That's the only two conditions under which you can waive. So the bottom line is, this happened in August and September, and we've been instructed that you've got to make sure that you've got the 63,720 minutes of instructional time during the course of the year. What I gave you after that is just something that the State Department put out, just saying the same thing, just this little blurb on the instructional minute waiver request. It says the 30 days at the end of the school year, or if you have to share facilities. So it just takes this big, long revised statute and puts it very succinctly into the two conditions under which you can waive. All right, the last page I've given you is out of Bulletin 741 that the Bessie Board has passed. And in that bulletin, those are sort of like the policies, just like our policy manual. So I extracted this section from the bulletin, which says the same thing, the 63,720 minutes and the conditions under which Bessie can waive them. All right, but it also, the reason I put this in here for you is to show you that under number 2, that when we count instructional minutes, you can't count recess, you can't count lunch, you can't count parent-teacher conferences, you can't count a change in class time. So when one period ends and you move to 3 or 4 minutes to the next period, you can't count those minutes. So you can only count minutes where children are really receiving instruction. All right, having said all of that, we hit our situation now. We were closed for 9 school days. Now that translates into a certain number of minutes, which I'm not going to get super technical with the minutes with you, because we do more than 360 minutes a day. But we have to make up the instructional minutes that we missed. Now, when we adopt the regular school calendar at the beginning of the year, we build in a couple of days extra, because of situations. We certainly haven't built in 9 days. I mean, there's no way. So this is what we are proposing, and I talked to Maggie Roussel today, who is the president of our teachers union, and discussed that this was what I was going to propose tonight for y'all to think about, and we would have to adjust the calendar at the regular meeting then in September, but I wanted everybody to know what our thoughts were in this process. All right, we have a little further, not a complication, but our high school is on block scheduling. When that means it mimics and has instructional time like the college does. An entire course is finished in 1 semester, and then the second semester they take new courses. So they take 4 courses in 1 semester like you do in college, each one lasting over 90 minutes. And then you finish those, you get a Carnegie unit credit, take a different 4 courses in the spring. Well, we have to make, in order to grant a Carnegie unit credit, we also have to look at minutes per semester. It doesn't matter with the elementary and middle, because you don't actually grant what we call Carnegie unit credit. It just matters in the high school that we have a sufficient number of instructional minutes in the first semester and a sufficient number in the second semester. So we have to make up some of the time in the first, maybe some of the time in the second. Now, what I intend to do is I want to add back 3 instructional days. The instructional days that we're adding back, or that we're proposing to add back from the original calendar. In the fall, we had November 1st as a student holiday, and that was a holiday for students and teachers, and all support staff for the schools. Not an office holiday here, but it was a school holiday. November 2nd was a professional development day for our employees, and the students were off. So what we're proposing to do is to have November 1st and 2nd as just regular school days. We have another professional development day scheduled on January 18th, which I have listed on this page that I gave. We want to make that an instructional day. So the 3 days I want to recapture are 2 days that our teachers are already working, but we're going to change them from professional development days to actual instructional days, and then take that November 1st holiday and turn that into an instructional day. The professional development, talking with Ms. Lametta and Ms. Harleton, who run our elementary, middle, and high school teacher prep programs and curriculum programs, they will do what we were normally scheduled to do in PD during the PLCs, the professional learning communities that we have during their planning periods, as well as what we call our cadres, which are our after-school PD programs for our teachers in the core areas of the middle and the high schools. So we feel that by doing that, we're not going to be losing any training, and it will minimize. We don't want to go into the holidays that we have set up, like Thanksgiving and Christmas and such, because that would more negatively impact not only the employees, but our families as well, who have planned vacations and different types of trips and such. Then I'm going to go internally into our school days and modify some times to regain some of the remaining instructional minutes. And you just have to trust me that I will do that with my math background. And I will make sure that we have 63,720 instructional minutes for the year, appropriately spread out in each semester to satisfy the high school requirements for the Carnegie unit credits. So we can make this work as long as we're not forced to miss any additional instructional days because of any subsequent storms or anything that would impact our calendar. So at that point, I invite any questions that you would have or any thoughts, and I'm not even asking you to do a motion right now, but to see that this is going to be the proposal, and I'm going to come back at the regular school meeting and put this as a formal proposal to change the calendar. But I wanted our employees as well as our families to know what we're thinking about doing so that they can make appropriate plans.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. Questions? Mr. Warner?
Ms. Voce, so do you anticipate this being on a agenda at Bessie to waive instructional minutes? I mean, Lafourche and Terrebonne and St. Charles Parish schools aren't even in right now, as I understand.
Right. What will happen for those parishes are a
St.
couple
Anne.
of things, or could be a couple of things. If you remember last year when Hurricane Laura hit the Lake Charles and Cameron area, followed by Delta, there was no waiver of instructional minutes. They had to make up the time, or their schools shared facilities so they could work out, I don't want to say a deal, but work with the state superintendent and Bessie in terms of if there would be a modification of the minutes allowed because of the shared facilities. The only person or the only entity that can waive instructional minutes is the legislature. When Katrina hit, if you remember, we had a special session of the legislature in November of that year. And they addressed the issue at that time. That's in this statute, the 2005-2006 amendment to this. So for those harder hit parishes like Terrebonne and Lafourche and St. John and St. Charles that are going to be missing a lot of days, then they may get a break under the shared facility piece to this, or it may come up and they may get their legislators to introduce legislation amending that statute for them, but it might not occur until the legislature meets in March or April in the spring. We're told in our instructions from the State Department of Education at this time is to modify your calendars and make sure that you can, because it's early in the year, make sure that you can make up that time. So for districts such as ours that did not lose an excessive amount of time, we're able to do so. So I honestly don't see anyone passing any legislation, and I'll be honest, nor would I request any unless we wanted to, because I feel that at this point we can handle it. If we had a subsequent event, it may be a different story. Kids right now have been impacted by COVID. They've been impacted for the last year and a half and now going into 2.5 years now on learning loss and lack, loss of instructional time because of the pandemic. This on top of that, you know, I feel we really need to get back in it and do what is best for the kids. So I think this is a good compromise that we can make happen. Those harder hit parishes, if we were in it just like we were in Katrina in 2005, we needed relief. And the legislature granted it to us. And I would venture to say there's going to be something for those parishes. And who knows, we might be thrown into that in March or April. But I don't think we can wait until March or April to develop a plan to take care of the situation now.
Thank you.
Mr. Long.
Well, I don't know if we can entrust you with our internal minutes.
I don't know.
Just joking.
No, I know, Joe.
But, no, that sounded like a good plan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Engel.
Thank you, Mr. President. What about the governor? The governor can't step in on this issue?
There's a possibility. I guess he can issue an executive order, and if
right.
he issues an executive order, who knows who's going to challenge what, at what time, and for whom? I don't know. If he
Attorney
would
General.
issue an executive order and
Right.
it is not challenged, then there's a possibility we could come back and undo this before November. Okay? But as of this time, I think the more prudent action is to go ahead and do this, to inform our families and our teachers that this is the plan that we know will work and take care of the existing state law. And if there is any change in that by the governor or any other entity, we can always come back before then and make an adjustment.
Are there any other questions at this time on the school calendar? Okay. There are no more questions or comments? Okay.
And I just want to, somebody asked me about the non-public schools. I don't know why they did, but, and I don't even know if I should address it, but in their bulletin, they don't need 63,720 minutes. There's nothing in state law that mandates instructional minutes for non-public schools, but in the Bessie bulletin, there is a requirement of 57,750 minutes for them, which is much less. So what our non-public schools do is totally different in terms of what we can do. Okay. Just to say that.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. Anyone else? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? There's a motion by Mr. Campbell, second by Mr. Egan. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you and good night.